Dr. Goldhamer, dude, you are a lot of fun. There is something about the twinkle in your eye when you get going on this stuff that I find just absolutely amazing. You've made me question things that, up until this point, I had never stopped to really look at the way that you present. I think it's extraordinary. Hey, everybody, welcome to another episode of Health Theory. I'm here today with Dr. Alan Goldhamer, who is the founder of True North Health Center, a leader in the field of plant-based nutrition. I'm super excited to talk to you because I was very intrigued by something that I've heard you talk about. And this was really the thing that sucked me into your world, which is that if you go to a doctor today, they don't actually expect you to get better. And that gave me the chills just saying it now. And when I heard it the first time, I was like, oh my God, that is so true. That's not the paradigm. Why is that not the paradigm?
Well, in medicine, particularly for conditions like high blood pressure, diabetes, autoimmune diseases, certain forms of cancer like lymphoma that make up, a significant percentage of the problems that people have, medical management is just that. It's management. They'll say, take these drugs and you'll be on these drugs the rest of your life because they'll guarantee you that you'll never get well. So, the reason for that is that the drugs have nothing to do with the reason why you got sick. And they're strictly trying to manage the consequences of your illness. And today, for example, with conditions like high blood pressure, you're not even being treated for your condition, you're being treated for your diet.
Now, if we were going to build out the ultimate fasting protocol, and in fact, what do you do annually? I know you're doing the narrowed eating window, so maybe a 16/8 or something like that. But when do you do a multi-day fast?
Yeah, so I hate fasting.
That makes two of us.
Yeah, it's awful because you can't exercise, you can't play basketball, you have to rest. It's really awful, but it's also very helpful. So I do it every year. I fast for a week. Our basic protocol is in healthy people, that are on healthy diets, generally have almost no downward symptoms during fasting. They don't have hunger. They don't have terrible healing crises. They don't get it's pretty boring, frankly. So we meditate and we relax and we rest and try to do all the right things. And I do it for a week. And if at the end of a week, perfectly stable, no symptoms, that's it. Back to refeeding carefully, takes half the length of the fast to refeed, back to the whole plant food SOS-free diet. And we do that every year. And I just did mine in November. Very uneventful, very helpful on many levels, but not exciting. Patients much more entertaining because they're coming off animal products, they're coming off coffee, they're coming off alcohol, they're coming off medications. They'll have active healing crisis. Inflammation, mucus discharge, they'll have skin elimination. You'll see the lumps and bumps falling off. You'll see low back discomfort. You'll see headaches. You'll see sleep disruption. It can be very what I call entertaining. And that you just keep going until that resolves.
Are they getting those symptoms though because of the release of toxins? Like why on earth would your lower back hurt?
Oh, because the kidneys are processing most of these metabolic products, and you get what's called viscerosomatic referral pain for 3 to 5 days, and then it goes away. The other thing that happens is things mobilize in inverse proportion. So in other words, you can lose 50% of your visceral fat, but you only lose 20% of your adipose tissue and only 4% of lean tissue. And then the lean tissue comes back with refeeding, but the fat doesn't. The fat continues to drop.
If you're doing the SOS diet, right? So if you went back to your normal eating, you can't
go back to greasy, fatty, slimy, processed crap. That's not going to work.
And I want to talk more about the SOS.
Part of the program is to educate people about how to eat. We do cooking demos, we do lectures, we have a whole Roku channel. We've got, we do all kinds of stuff to what I call brainwash people so that they're prepared to go home and efficiently apply a whole natural foods diet. We particularly like vegetable materials. So both raw and cooked vegetable materials and these starchy, like Hubbard squash and butternut squash and kombucha. We're not talking about tater tots and flour products and sugary things and all kinds of artificial processed crap. We're talking about whole foods. Okay, so your fruits, vegetables, non-glutinous grains. We don't use glutinous grains at all. We're using more like when we talk about grains, we're talking about quinoa and millet and rice and like you cook.
Right, let's dip into a few things specifically that as somebody who's dabbled in sort of a plant first approach but never gone vegetarian or vegan. One, I've always told people that fruit is nature's candy bar. What is it about? Like, can I take an unlimited amount of fruit? Because like, if you told me I could eat watermelon, apples, bananas, oranges all day, I'm in, homie. Like, I don't need
That
anything
doesn't work.
else.
No, that's not going to work. So the problem is today's hybridized fruits are very high in sugar and very low in fiber. So they're not like the wild apples in Hawaii where they look more like vegetables. I mean, these are, and they're perfectly good foods if they're used appropriately. So we use whole fruit, not fruit juices, not dried fruits, not processed, artificial sugars. We're talking about your berries, your melons. And we usually have one meal that might have some fruit and two meals that are really more vegetable dominated. So they might, let's say, for example, somebody has oatmeal in the morning with some blueberries and maybe some flax seeds ground or some walnuts. They have a huge salad with big steamed vegetables at lunch and dinner with enough complex carbohydrates so they don't get too skinny. And so the idea is we're looking at about 10% of calories from protein, about 15 to 18% of calories from fat, with the balance coming from whole plant food carbohydrate. Now, there's a problem. In order to get enough calories on this kind of a diet, you have to eat a lot of volume. You're talking about several pounds of food a day because, potatoes, rice, and beans all have 500 calories a pound, not, 2,000 calories a pound from, say, nuts or seeds or even higher from animal products. So you have to eat, or 4,000 calories a pound from oil. So we're not pouring olive oil over everything. We're just eating whole foods. There's no salt, oil, or sugar. It's just the salt, oil, and sugar naturally containing in these whole food
Why is
diets.
salt bad?
Well, salt has a couple problems. Salt's not bad. Sodium chloride is a necessary nutrient without which you die. You have to have enough sodium in your diet. It happens to be that you get all the sodium you need from large volumes of these whole natural foods. Just like you get enough carbohydrate, you don't have to add sugar. And then you get enough essential fatty acids, including docosahexaonic acid, et cetera, that you form from your DHA, or you form from your omega-3 by eating whole plant foods. But the problem with added salt is that it stimulates what's called passive overeating. So if you just give an animal its fill till it feels satiated, say rice, whatever, it'll eat a certain amount and then it feels satiated. You salt it, they'll eat significantly more. And people say, well, yeah, it tastes better. You're eating more because you like it better. But you're eating more because the salt, the chemical salt, the sodium chloride in higher concentrations stimulates dopamine in the brain, results in increased intake. It affects satiety. And so the problem for people trying to lose weight if they're eating salted foods, usually too the salted foods are things like flour products that are turned into breads or crackers or cookies that are also hyper-concentrated in calories, but the salt will allow them to eat more. Think about bread. If you take the salt out of bread, and you take out the sugar, it's called matzah. Well, they have to eat it once a year on Passover, and that's it, because that's the only time you'll talk. Nobody's running out and buying big boxes of matzah as a routine, because it's flour and water. It doesn't taste good, because any highly fractionated food needs salt, oil, and sugar or combinations in order to increase flavor. That's what chefs are, is people that take hyper-concentrated foods and add salt, oil, and sugar to it and deliver it to the palate so it stimulates the brain in the most intense way possible.
All
We're
right,
saying
so
get away from all that.
let's your addict analogy I think is very apt, and I want people to burn that into their soul, that there are some people that can get away with having some of this stuff and it doesn't become a huge problem, though they would almost certainly be better off from a longevity perspective, from a feel-good perspective, if they went to a totally plant-based SOS diet. But so for someone like me, I don't struggle with my weight. I don't have an addictive personality. I can fast if I want, just because I think it's better for me. But when I think about going to a full plant-based diet, sort of forgetting about a pure SOS diet for a second, but one of the things that I already eat that I know that I would eat is an avocado, like literally the avocado, mash it, nothing else added to it. I take a raw baby carrot and then I put salt on the avocado. It is fucking delicious. Is it still bad for me though if I'm not overweight, I don't have a problem overeating it? At that point, does salt still have such a problem that I should be cutting it out of my diet, or am I only cutting it out to stop me from passive overeating?
Well, I think it's not just passive overeating, because salt also is a very powerful preservative, which is why it's used, throughout history. Before we had refrigeration and stuff, that helped food not go bad, so that people didn't get sick from eating spoiled meats and other foods. And so it is an effective preservative. But when you think about the 5 pounds of bacteria that live in your gut, it may not be too good an idea to put too much of a preservative into that gut because it will alter the microflora. Part of the reason people on meat-based diets have completely different microflora than plant-based diets may in part be because of the higher salt intake that's oftentimes associated with it. Now, let's be clear. Vegan diets can be total crap. Soda pop, potato chips, and other generic terms for highly processed fractionated foods can all be vegan. Oreo cookies are vegan. That doesn't make them healthy. It just makes them not have animal food in it. So I'm not arguing that vegan foods can't be crappy foods. They certainly can. I get in trouble speaking at national vegan conferences explaining to people that as challenging as meat products can be, the vegan processed food products may be worse and that they'd be better off eating the meat, and that just gets them all upset because they're being driven from moral, ethical, and spiritual viewpoints and saving the planet and all that stuff. I'm not arguing that. I'm just arguing I just want patients to live a long and healthy life and not be debilitated. And we know that too much animal protein is definitely a detriment. So people that are eating large amounts of animal protein have higher problems with kidney disease and cardiovascular disease. There's definitely, at some point, there's too much that needs to be reduced, even for people that are going to advocate animal foods as a whole natural food. Now, you might ask me, can people eat meat and still maintain optimum weight? Absolutely. Because meat isn't a highly fractionated pleasure trap food. It's a whole natural. The problem with meat is it's very concentrated. If you eat too much of it, you can have problems. But it's not the same thing, for example, as dairy products, which are a highly processed animal food that has all the challenges of animal foods, but now it has the problems of the salt. Like try eating your cheese without salt and see what it tastes like. It's the salt that people really like about it. Absolutely. So that's why this gets very clouded and confusing, is that because it's not just meat or it's not just plants. It's really a question of how processed foods are and how do we get away from having so much processed foods. And frankly, meat itself without salt, just boil some meat and chew on it a bit and see if that's how appealing it is to you. You know what I'm saying? It's like,
yeah. Now, I think people get sugar, and I think a lot of people so associate salt with heart disease or high blood pressure that they can buy those two. The one that trips me out and that I'm super interested to get your take on is not bad oils, things that everybody considers bad, like vegetable oil, French fries fried in oil, like that kind of thing. But like
what about olive oil
on a salad, that's the one I want to talk about.
So olive oil is way less bad than the other oils. It's omega-9 fatty acid. It has a different ratio of fatty acids. It can be less processed. Theoretically, you can squish those olives and extract the oil. The thing is, it's still 9 calories a gram of highly processed fat that begins to peroxidize as you break it down. So there's still challenges even with olive oil. Now, would I agree that olive oil is less bad than the others? Oh, no question. And particularly if it's not heated at high temperature, which is the other problem with fats when you do fried foods. And I mean, that's a whole nother cascade of problems. I don't think most people are arguing that that's good, though. Most people know that's not, but they're going to want to try to preserve, well, like John McDougall says that people love good news about their bad habits. And so the arguments are that this is so much less bad that now it makes it good. Well, that's not really true. Less bad just means less bad. It doesn't make it good. You don't need to fractionate or process your oils down. You can get all the essential fats you need by using your avocado. And minimally processing it. Okay, you mush it or you chew it up, but you don't have to extract the oil out of the cells and increase its concentration, remove the fiber, remove a lot of the other benefits. The problem with too much fat in the diet, though, is that fat is very efficient. And so as a consequence, it's really easy, particularly if you're eating refined oils, to overeat. That 1 tablespoon of olive oil has more calories than the salad. So we aren't really. I just put a little drip, but it's so rich. We just aren't getting the proportion here. That pound of salad has 100 calories, whereas you've got 100, more than 100 calories in that dressing serving. So it's more than you think. And if you really literally just put a few drops on, what you find is you can't taste it. There's no reason for it to even be there. So if I would say have your avocado and your carrots, just leave the salt alone. You don't need the extra added salt, then you'll be back to a whole natural food diet that's SOS free.
Talk to me about variety, because honestly, I could eat avocados, carrots, kale, a really small handful of things, a banana, maybe an apple, a couple times a week, whatever I get that we can't overdo the, now sort of bastardized fruit. But how much variety do I need to not be malnutritioned on a vegetarian diet?
Well, it's surprisingly small amount, and particularly if it rotates with the season. For example, if you ate just 2,000 calories, we'll just assume for a second that you were the average. You need more than that, but if you were the average guy, weren't working out, didn't use your brain that much, and you only needed 2,000 calories a day, just which is the RDA average. My guess is you probably burn 3,000 calories a day or more. But at 2,000 calories a day, if you ate 2,000 calories of just say brown rice and broccoli, that was it, your entire diet, you would get all the vitamins, minerals, protein, essential amino acids. You get about 80 grams of protein out of that. And, 3 cups of rice, 4 cups of broccoli. It would be a boring diet, but you would get everything except B12 that you need. And that is one thing on these plant-based diets. If you really aren't getting the fecal contamination associated with animal foods, you do need to get a source of B12. It only comes from bacteria, and we recommend 1,000 micrograms of methylcobalamin a day, and that'll meet virtually everybody's needs. So that is an issue. You have to get out in the sun to get enough vitamin D, because you're not drinking your vitamin D fortified milk, because you have to actually make it in the sun or supplement it if necessary. So fortunately, you can avoid most of the other pills and potions and powders because these large volumes of plant-based foods have a high degree of nutrition. And particularly when you emphasize the green vegetable materials, the raw and cooked greens and your broccoli and chard and kale, these are really nutrient-rich foods, very low in caloric density. But you do have to eat a lot. And so that's one of the downsides, a lot more eating and chewing. The good news is, though, you have normal microflora to feed your gut, so you're not getting TMA, which becomes TMAO, which is so dominant in the meat gut flora. You're getting all of the micronutrients that you need. You get the fiber, you have satiety, you're getting enough hydration because you get a lot of water content from these water content rich foods in addition to whatever water you're drinking. But you don't have the chronic constipation, which means you don't get the fissures and the hemorrhoids, and you're not having the varicose veins and the prolapsed uteruses and the ptosis and the diverticulitis and all the other conditions that come from a very low fiber diet. And this is one of the challenges for people, even though they're trying to eat healthy, but using an animal rich diet, unless they get enough fiber in, they're not feeding the microflora in their gut. That's why colitis patients have so much trouble. Literally, that microflora ends up having to eat the coating of the intestinal tract, because it's going to survive just like you want to survive. You feed it soluble fibers, you get a different balance. So even if you're going to do a meat in the diet, you better get enough vegetables in addition, so that you get the fiber and the nutrients and the materials that you need.
Talk to me really fast about rice. Brown rice, can I have white rice? I get no salt, no oil. But if I could just shovel my face full of white rice, I would be a pretty happy camper. I love adding that to other things. Like, it's just such a cool base.
Can I not a fan of white rice because you eliminate the fiber, the micronutrients that are so beneficial to rice. All you're doing is basically getting that carbohydrate. Now, granted, it may not be as refined as sugar and white flour and stuff. There's another problem with rice. Rice is one of those bioaccumulators foods because of the ways it's grown. So if you buy rice that's been raised on land that they raise cotton on, they used arsenic pesticides on those cotton fields. And there's still arsenic in those soils, and it sucks up into rice more so than it might other people. And so arsenic concentrations in rice, particularly white rice grown on fields that were sprayed with arsenic pesticides, can be a potential bioaccumulation threat. Now, there are some places like California where they never raised cotton, didn't use as much arsenic pesticides. And so like we buy Lundberg Farms organic rice, and they are very public about posting their arsenic concentration. There's some of all this kind of stuff in virtually everything. Actually, the people that should be most concerned are big chicken eaters, because chickens tend to be really high because of the feed that they get and other stuff. But anyway, so if you're going to use rice, there's things you can do to reduce the concentration of arsenic. One is cook it like you would pasta, which is 5 parts water, 1 part rice. That'll reduce buy rice that's, like I said, grown by companies that are growing on land that they don't use arsenic pesticides, and that's organically grown, so they're not spraying it with crap today. There's other grains, though, like quinoa and millet and other grains that are also alkaline forming and, don't have that kind of accumulation problem. So I'd say you would use a variety of those, but I would prefer whole grains, not the refined grains.
Right. What about
Uh,
glyphosate for somebody taking in
yeah,
so much vegetable matter? That's got to be on your
right.
radar.
It is an issue for people. Fortunately, now there's a higher and higher percentage of organically grown fruits and vegetables available. In fact, do you know who the largest seller of organic produce in the country is now?
No.
It's Costco Foods.
Whoa. Okay.
Costco Foods is the largest producer or seller of organic produce. Do you know who number two is?
No.
It's Walmart.
Ah, I should have guessed.
So
Yep. Yep.
what's happened now is they've said, oh, I don't think these companies sat down and said, well, we really want to help the health of our clients. They said, oh, people will pay a premium for food that doesn't use glyphosate or doesn't
Right.
use chemicals. Well, why don't we sell them that food? And now it's become a dominant source of their produce sales because people spoke with their dollars and they said, we would prefer to have our vegetable material grown without this. And they're doing the same thing with meat. They're trying to buy free range meat that doesn't have all the antibiotics and the chemicals because they know that animals biologically accumulate and concentrate these materials. And I don't always think it's an and or too. Even if you're going to, for example, include animal foods in your diet, if you eat a dominant amount of vegetable materials in addition to that, your likelihood that your negative consequences from the animal food will be minimized, and then the health benefits of eating a healthy diet are going to be maximized. I think it's a question of proportion and quantity that's the major issue. I don't think that there's any evidence that the 100% vegan necessarily has any advantage over the person that's mostly vegan and uses a small amount of other products in their diet. I don't know that we can demonstrate that difference, not from a health standpoint.
Yeah, that makes sense. Dr. Goldhamer, dude, you are a lot of fun. There is something about the twinkle in your eye when you get going on this stuff that I find just absolutely amazing. You've made me question things that, up until this point, I had never stopped to really look at the way that you present. I think it's extraordinary. Where can people engage with you if they want to come to
Sure.
True North? Like how do they do it?
Well, we have a service for your viewers that if they would like a free phone conversation with me about whether their particular issues would be benefited by anything like we're talking about here with diet and fasting, they can go to our website at truenorthhealth.com and complete what are called the registration forms, which is just their medical history, basically. I'll review that. They can call me at no cost, and I'll be happy to talk to them. And if there is something that's relevant, I'll be happy to refer them to, if they want to do fasting, to the closest place to them that does fasting, or we have a dozen doctors that do phone coaching and telemedicine that are available remotely. And we've got medical doctors, chiropractors, psychologists, all those people that are available. And our website has True North TV, which is, and there's also a Roku channel, True North on Roku, that has all of our video content and educational materials. Everything's freely available. They can go to the site. They can look at our studies, our articles. We even have a fasting.org site that's just fasting compendium site. So it's our and other people's research on fasting. Again, all freely available to people. They just go online. And if they have any questions, give me a call.
That's amazing. Dude, hopefully you and I will cross paths again. This has been really, really incredible, and researching you was beyond enlightening. Guys, if you haven't, by the way, gone into his world, I highly, highly encourage it. This is somebody who is a lifelong devotee of meat, and he's really got me thinking about things that I'm going to be experimenting with and trying. Look, my thing. I want to live as long as humanly possible and in good health. And if this is the man that has it, he's putting it to the test.
Check out our book, The Pleasure Trap. It'll bend your mind.
No, for sure. The concepts in that book are extraordinary. Definitely in fact, we should bring you back for round 2 to talk about the psychological problems that people go through when they try to do this. And that's a whole interview unto itself. All right, guys. And speaking of things that are unto themselves, if you haven't already, be sure to subscribe. And until next time, my friends, be legendary. Take care.